These old soldiers are on a pilgrimage. They've come to Saint-Nazaire on the western coast of Brittany, retracing the steps they took as young men 60 years ago. In June 1940, they witnessed a disaster of extraordinary proportions, a disaster that was officially forgotten. For 60 years, these men have carried with them memories of a tragedy on a scale which seems almost incredible.
People think in terms of the Titanic, or the Lusitania, or that sort of thing, but you can add those two together, multiply them X times, and you're still a long way out as to the numbers who died that day.
This is the last official pilgrimage, back to the place where the troop ship Lancastria sank.
So how are you getting out to the ship then?
Anything will float. We loaded at 8 o'clock in the morning. We come on board here at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was nearly loaded then.
The small band of survivors making the journey have come in a common spirit.
Friends and comrades, all sharing perhaps the same thoughts and pictures in their mind, and thinking how lucky I am to be here. 60 years, everyone has been a bonus.
Wish me luck and you wave me goodbye. Cheerio, here I go on my way. Wish me luck. You wave me goodbye with a cheer, not a tear, make it pay.
In September 1939, the British Expeditionary Force was setting out for France. At first, morale was high in what was called the Phony War. The troops who sailed from Southampton could not have predicted how their luck would change.
Wish me luck and you wave me goodbye.
By June 1940, the war was real. The German army had swept through Holland and Belgium. They were trying to trap the Allied forces in northwest France. Harry Pettit was a young private in the Royal Army Service Corps.
You know the story of Dunkirk, how 300,000 got away from the beaches, but there were quite another 100,000 left in France behind, some in the west, some in the east. We knew we'd got to get to a French port. There were hundreds of us, thousands of us, all kinds, all units, all regiments, and they were all trekking west. And to make it worse, there were the tens of thousands of refugees. We couldn't get away from any of the northern French ports, so we went on west, partly on foot, partly in army trucks, on to Saint-Nazaire. There were tens of thousands of British troops and French people, Belgian people, all wanting to get out. There were ships appearing on the horizon, ex-liners taken over as troop ships, destroyers, small boats, coal boats. All these ships were going to pick up as many of the English troops as possible and take them back home.
Harry was taken out to a troop ship anchored 10 miles offshore. His Majesty's transport ship Lancastria began life in a very different guise. In peacetime, the Cunard liner sailed the transatlantic route from Southampton. Originally called Tyrrhenia, no one liked the name, and so she was rechristened Lancastria. Changing a ship's name is supposed to be bad luck.
give thanks for all those who go down to the sea in ships and occupy their business in deep waters. And of thy tender mercy remember us too in thy kingdom, that serving thee now here on earth, we may with our comrades and kinsfolk be found worthy to be made partakers.
On June the 17th, 1940, these men counted themselves lucky to be heading for the Lancastria. Amongst the first to board that day was Henry Harding, then a private in the Royal Army Ordnance Corps.
As we boarded it, we were given Board of Trade life jackets. So we were lucky, being the first one. And I can remember hearing in the afternoon over the tannoy that the canteen would be open and they would be selling, amongst other things, bottled bass. So I joined this queue for the bottled bass. It was weaving its way here, the up gangways and that sort of thing. And I saw those who had been successful at the head of the queue coming back with a bottle of bass. It was only a small bottle of bass. And I said to myself, God, is it worth it? Is it worth it suffering here in this heat because it was a warm June afternoon? I think I'll go up on deck. That was a decision that I've never ever regretted. And because there was now room on the open deck, I was able to stretch myself out, resting my head on the Board of Trade life jacket.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
Some say up to 9,000 men boarded the Lancastria. Many of them lie here.
Is anyone who served in the RAOC with me? But so far I haven't come across.
Unidentified.
These are all unidentified here.
Part of life.
But I am looking in particular for someone who was in the RAOC with me in Nantes and who perished.
I said the Navy boys, where the...
Yeah, this is the Royal Engineers.
Yes. Well, I have seen headstones of those bearing the RAOC crest, but I don't remember them at all. We were so many, and over 60 years, you forget. You forget people. But they're here.
What happened to all the...
Yes, if you make note of the dates here, the majority of them, the 17th of June, which was the day of the disaster. 17th of June. 17th of June.
Unidentified bodies, isn't it?
Never ever forget it, will we? No.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
10 miles offshore, the spot where the Lancastria lay at anchor, heavily overloaded and awaiting an escort home. Out on deck, Henry Harding was enjoying the sunshine, looking up at the sky above.
I saw these two slowly rotating propellers, and I saw 3 bombs. I counted 3 bombs. Others said it was 4.
We were all ordered to go down below. We were packed like sardines. I did get down one flight and waited down below, and we knew something was happening. There was a great tension everywhere.
I'm not used to using profane language, but I can remember saying, Christ almighty, we are being bombed. And I followed the flight of the bombs down, and I could see that they were going to strike the ship somewhere. And this is the silly sort of thing that you do in that particular situation. I buried my head in the Board of Trade life jacket and peered over the top. I didn't see the bomb strike, but I knew that they had. There was debris all over the place.
And despite the explosions, everything seemed to be eerily quiet.
The ship took a lurch, first to port and then over to starboard. And then we really knew that we were in trouble. I won't say there was no panic, there was some, because everybody wanted to do one thing, and that was to get up on deck and see if they could save themselves.
And I went to the rail of the ship, and one of the stewards, he was in the livery of the Cunard line, he came up to me and he said, "It's all right, son." I was only 19 at the time. "It's all right, son. This is a good ship. It isn't going to sink." And at that moment, it lurched. It started to list. And I said to him, "You might think it isn't going to sink, but I have my own ideas on this. I am getting off."
Troops on other ships nearby could only watch in horror. The Lancastria had taken 4 direct hits.
It had blown great holes through the bottom. The oil tanks had burst, and men down below at the bottom were all killed, of course, without having a chance to get up. And I joined the others trying to fight a way out. And I did get up, but only when the ship was over on its side, more upside down than right way up, and the propellers were well out of the water. And then I slid off and into the sea.
The black dots are people who made it into the water. Thousands more clung to the fast sinking ship. Henry Harding remembers the moment he decided to jump.
I still have the watch that I was wearing at the time. That's the time there, 4:05. It was bombed at about 3:50. About 4:05, I had made up my mind, jump, and that was it.
As Henry watched from the water, a horror was unfolding in front of him.
In the portholes, I could see bodies wedged. Dead or alive, I don't know. But behind the bodies, hands, either pushing them out or trying to pull them back in to make their own escape possible. But behind that, the flames. And I can remember saying, if there is a hell, it isn't out here, it's there.
Now, I did not actually see the Lancastria disappear beneath the waves. When your nose is at the level of the water, it is difficult to determine the distance. It could have been 200, 300, 400 yards, I don't know. But I saw that it had upturned, and that there must have been thousands clinging to it, or the last minutes of their lives. Now, what I do remember, always remember it, as far away as I was or whatever, there were thousands of voices singing, "Roll at the Battle," and "They'll always be in England." And for years afterwards, I could not stand the sound of those two songs. I could not. And the next that I saw, nothing. Thousands had gone to a watery grave. I will always remember it. I can't ever forget it.
His Majesty's ship, the transport ship the Lancastria, was bombed at this spot.
Our vessel seemed to be escorted with a dolphin or dolphins. I know. Of the three vessels, ours was the only one to have a dolphin. And then as we arrived over the wreck, well, what does one think about? What lies beneath and what is entombed?
As the Lancastria sank, Harry Pettit found himself being sucked under.
The pressure on my body was terrific as you further went down, down, down. I was sure that I was dying. I only hoped it would be quick, because it felt as if my whole body was going to be split with the pressure of the water. I don't know how far it went down, but I went with it. It burst my eardrums, which is partly the cause of the origin of my deafness today. And suddenly this painful descent stopped. And I just shot to the top. I don't know how far, 50 feet or more, I don't know. But I shot to the top like a cork that's been released underwater. And I didn't know for 10 years why that was, until 10 years later I learned that the water was very shallow and that the Lancastria had sunk on a kind of sandbank. So it landed on the sandbank, the suction stopped, and I was shot to the surface, thank goodness.
The Lancastria had claimed the lives of thousands. And still the death toll rose. German planes returned, machine gunning men in the water and dropping burning flares onto the oily sea.
I joined a little raft made of human beings. 3 or 4 had life jackets and 1 or 2 hadn't, but we just linked shoulders and floated around in the water for a time. Several very brave things were done. I saw young soldiers doing very brave acts, and I saw just the opposite, a chap who was going out of his mind, I think. He was babbling and screaming, and he attacked us. Well, he fought up and he tried to join this little group, and there just wasn't room for him. He hadn't got a life jacket, and he fought and struggled, and so we had to push him off. So he pushed off and he went across 10, 12 yards away where there was a body floating on the water which had a life jacket on, and he went across to this body. He was going out of his mind, this poor fellow, and he attacked this single body and hoped to get the life jacket off. But suddenly the body came to life when he attacked it and fought back, and a terrible struggle went on until the madman, I must call him the madman, had had enough, and he just sank below the water. And I wonder what the fellow who had the life jacket and was simply floating and saving his energy, what he thought after. Did he suffer remorse? I felt sorry for him, but what he did, he had to do. It was one or the other. getting weaker and weaker. I thought towards the end, well, this is it. I can't last much longer. I shall just have to give in. And then suddenly I heard a lovely rich Cockney voice saying, "Don't go yet, there's another one here." And in my view came a destroyer's launch with men on board, survivors and sailors, and they came up to me and they said, "Come on, lad, in you get." And then two of them jumped into the sea, one each side. From the look of them, they'd been in the sea many times. They were covered with black oil themselves, and one each side hauled me up, and there I joined lots of others. You didn't recognise them. They were all as black as coal.
In all, 2,500 people were rescued. Many had discarded their clothes in the struggle for survival.
We just parked down wherever we could. They took us down below to the washrooms, they scrubbed us, they turned the hoses on us, they gave us mugs of great hot tea. Lovely, that was the best tea I've had in my life.
All the survivors had remarkable stories to tell, but they would never be heard. Back in London, Churchill gave orders to hush up the loss of the Lancastria. When the troops sailed into Plymouth the next day, there was no news of the tragedy. It was as if nothing had happened.
I still remember sailing up Plymouth Sound. It was a glorious sunny day, and on the beaches at the side you could see people enjoying sunbathing, swimming on the sand and the beach. And I looked at it and I thought, this is a war, isn't it? My God, they don't know what they're in for. Playing about on the sands when the things are happening over the other side, as we have seen.
Churchill judged that the country's morale was too fragile to bear news of a disaster on this scale. The soldiers were given paper to write home on, but ordered not to make any mention of what had happened. This film of their homecoming was kept by the War Office and never shown.
What I feel strongly about is that hundreds and hundreds, possibly thousands, of people lost close relatives in that tragedy, and nobody told them what had happened. They were just allowed to go on for months and even years, and some of them didn't know how their husbands or sons had died. And I thought this was really dreadful.
And so the story stayed hidden. The evidence of this inconvenient disaster now lies 12 fathoms down. A mass grave, detectable only by ship's sonar. Every June, Harry Pettit and his comrades in the Lancastria Association make their quiet pilgrimage to Saint-Nazaire.
Le grand paquebot devenu troupier, Lancastria.
Though in Britain the Lancastria is largely forgotten, here in Saint-Nazaire local people do remember. Many helped in the rescue. When the Lancastria sank, Gaston Leblanc was a boy of 15. He later served in the resistance and was tortured by the Gestapo.
The French forces here at Saint-Nazaire transported the survivors to hospital. They were helped by ambulance men, many of whom are here today. For months, there were corpses washed up all over the region. One year, we found in marshland the bones of a body with identity tags. We looked. It was British. To this day, we still find bodies. We'll find bodies again.
Les corps, il y en a pas, et on en retrouvera encore.
It remains the single worst disaster in British maritime history. Despite the official silence, these men have waged a lifelong struggle to keep the memory of the Lancastria alive.
I'm glad you turned up.
Morris Lesput, one of my finds.
That's right.
Western Superman.
That's it.
Yes. I did my best over the last 10 or 20 years to get some kind of recognition for these people, and I have found up to 200 people. There's lots more that have not been found, even now, who lost close relatives and knew nothing. And other people, I think, appreciate it. I got a letter of commendation from the Imperial War Museum thanking me for all the help I've given these people. But I shouldn't have had to do it. Somebody in authority should have done all this. It shouldn't have been left to somebody like me to go out and help these people in this way. Bad show.